just by the very act of taking a picture, it's pretty obvious that as photographers, we're trying to capture a moment. And we're also trying to show something when we take a picture. And there are all kinds of different ways to show what we're trying to capture. Today on Short Exposure, it's part one of directing the viewer's eye to a subject in your photograph. I'm Ray Scott, and welcome to Visual Art Photography Tutorials. So today, we're going to take a look at 4 different techniques to help drive the viewer's eye in your photograph to the subject. But before we get underway, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you who subscribe to the channel. Much appreciated. And for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And you'll be joining a growing group of very enthusiastic photographers. Okay, let's take a look at those 4 techniques right on the computer. All right, so first up, our first technique for directing the viewer's eye in your photograph is to use the edges of the frame. All right, now this is a great place in Newfoundland called Newtown. And, like most scenes in Newfoundland, they're just gorgeous. And, of course, you're going to look at the rocks and, the little wharf here and the homes. But in the end, your eye is going to keep on going back to this gentleman working off the end of this wharf. Why? Well, one, because he's a human being, and human beings we tend to find rather interesting in photographs. But he also offers scale to the image. But he's at the edge of the frame, and it really makes a difference. How about this? Another frame that is filled with all kinds of things, but this little hut, this little shack up at the top, right by the edge of the frame, is definitely the main subject. And by putting it up there, it allows the rest of the image to breathe. You have all these fantastic rocks and the grass and the beautiful blue water, but red, that doesn't hurt either. The fact that the shack is red, that attracts the eye as well, but it's up at the top. Just kind of an interesting way to drive the viewer. How about this one? I call it isolation because there's a lady up at the top here walking her dog along the sandbar, and I mean small, right up at the edge, and there's a lot of very simplistic stuff going on in front of her, but your eye keeps on going back to her and her dog. Another one out in Newfoundland, and placing the little hut at the top. Now there's more action back here, but your eye is going to go to this very light colored hut, the sky being reflected in the water, but again, the subject up at the top. Okay, so that's one technique for bringing the viewer's eye into the image to your subject. How about this one? Selective color. I like using this. Take a black and white image and then colorize just a part of it. Selective color. So basically, autumn leaves, and you have the coloration, and that definitely stands out. Here we know exactly where your eye is going to go. How about this one? This is an infrared treatment of the image, except for the little creek that's running through it. Now, the little creek, this is very surreal, I have to admit, because you have the black sky, because it's a black and white image, but you're reflecting what was originally the blue sky in the creek, and it gives it kind of an otherworldly vanilla sky kind of feel. Selective color. One more. This old Vermont playhouse turned to black and white, except for what's in the window. And that offers you a bit of insight as to what's going on in terms of the season. It is fall, and in back you have, it's reflecting yellow leaves, yellow and orange leaves from the trees. So that's the second technique. Number 3, shallow depth of field. All right, that makes your subject stand out. This one's shot, I think, at around f4, f5, 6. It's a macro shot. Your eye is definitely going one place and one place only in this image, and that's to this refracted flower. Depth of field, shallow depth of field can really make things pop. Here you have leaves that are stuck on a fence after a windstorm, and in back of all this, believe it or not, is a baseball field. But because I used a very shallow depth of field, you're looking at the pattern in the fence and you're looking at the leaves. You can't even see the baseball field in the back. And I think one more. That's me, okay? And making me stand out against what are trees in the background by, again, using a shallow depth of field. And actually I have one more, which doesn't necessarily fall into this, but I'm using it anyway, because here's a case of the glasses are in focus. The book up front is almost in focus, and then the book in back is out of focus, but by focusing through the glasses, and just highlighting one word in the title of this book. And I guess, I don't know, it's kind of simplistic, but it's also kind of busy, but in the end, your eye keeps on going back to island. So that's tip number 3 for directing the viewer's eye in your photographs to the subject that you want to highlight. And another technique number 4 for today, is framing the subject that you want to highlight. And in this case, it's a tree, an apple tree in the spring, blossoming, and full blossoms, using this archway and this opening to frame, and actually the whole thing to frame this apple blossom tree. And in this last one, this gentleman is being framed. This was taken in Spain. I'm actually going to use this for another technique. This picture falls in perfectly with another technique coming up in part 2, but it also works for this, which is framing the subject. And he is literally framed by the opening in this door and also by the door itself. All right? So there are 4 different techniques. Use the edge of the frame, selective color, shallow depth of field, or you can frame your subject to highlight your subject to drive the viewer's eye to the subject. So there you have it, 4 different techniques to help drive the viewer's eye to the subject in your photograph. Some of them are obvious, some of them may be new for you. Anyway, that's part 1. Now in part 2, we're going to take a look at 4 more techniques to help move the viewer's eye in the frame in your photographs. But until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you that it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I'll see you soon.